A year ago today, at just about this same hour, we learned that Virginia Congressman Gerry Connolly had lost his battle with esophageal cancer. He died just one day after introducing the Esophageal Cancer Awareness Act. And yesterday, the U.S. Senate passed the measure now named after Congressman Connolly, and it's headed to President Trump's desk for signing. Joining me now is Congressman James Walkinshaw, who succeeded Mr. Connolly to represent Virginia's 11th congressional district. He also served as Connolly's chief of staff in Congress for more than a decade. Congressman, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just on a personal level, we know you were very close with Congressman Connolly, obviously, but what does the Gerald E. Connolly Esophageal Cancer Awareness Act do?
First, I just want to say it's a hard day for all of us who loved him and cared for him, but also a day to celebrate his legacy and his accomplishments and the impact he had. And one piece of that is this legislation, which will require the Government Accountability Office to produce a report on esophageal cancer, pre-screening efforts, treatment efforts for federal workers. And I think the way to look at it is this report can lay the groundwork for us to really take the fight to esophageal cancer in the way that Gerry would want us to.
Sure. I know the act was a bipartisan bill. It passed unanimously by consent in both houses, which is rare. What do you think Mr. Connolly, would have made of all of this?
I think he would have been proud. And look, he was rated as the most effective legislator in Congress. He passed dozens and dozens of pieces of legislation. I think he would have been particularly proud of this one. He recognized even after his diagnosis that we're at an inflection point in terms of cancer treatment in this country, in this world, with dramatic advancements occurring every day. We've seen recently dramatic advances in treatment for pancreatic cancer, and I think he saw esophageal cancer as the next on that list in line for dramatic improvements in treatment to eventually find a cure.
Well, his legacy was certainly remarkable, and as you mentioned, a tough day certainly for so many. Congressman, while I've got you, I'd be remiss not to ask you a couple of these questions. So let's talk a little bit about the collapse of Virginia's redistricting plan. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected the emergency appeal, effectively ending the referendum effort, and we're seeing several campaigns having to suspend operations. If you were explaining this to voters who were in favor of those new maps, what's your takeaway from all of this, and really what does this mean for Democrats heading into the midterms?
Well, I obviously disagree with the Virginia Supreme Court's ruling. They essentially overturned the will of the voters based on a new definition that they created that doesn't currently exist in the Constitution of Virginia and Virginia law. But look, right now our focus as Democrats, and I think as Virginians, will be on fighting it out under the lines that exist. We have an opportunity here in Virginia to pick up at least 2, potentially 3 Democratic seats that could be the deciding point in terms of whether Democrats control the House of Representatives or not, and that's our focus.
I wanted to ask you, too, this $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund that we've been talking about with President Trump. It's using taxpayer money, right, to pay those who say they were politically targeted. You called it on X one of the biggest grifts in American history. What can Congress do about it?
Well, I did call it that. I think it is outrageous corruption. Look, Americans, Virginians right now are waking up, going to work, working their butts off every single day, struggling to afford gas and groceries and rent. And the Trump administration, Donald Trump, is setting up a slush fund to pay off his political allies. What can Congress do? So I've signed on to a lawsuit with dozens, probably now hundreds of other members of Congress to try to block it in court. There are also efforts to block funding for this slush fund in the appropriations process. Legislation is being introduced today to do that. We've heard over the last 24 to 48 hours, a number of Republicans, those who are not running for re-election for the most part, who are coming out and speaking out against this and opposed to it. So we're going to try to build a bipartisan coalition to stop this. Last thing we need right now is giving taxpayer dollars to political cronies while Americans are struggling to make ends meet.
All right. Congressman James Walkinshaw, certainly appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you.